Live. Okay, we are live. Special YouTube only episode of Patriot's Lament because the radio station is on quarantine or whatever. So we will have no Fox News, but we might make up some news, which is pretty much the same thing. Why don't we start off? There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Did you guys watch any of those Jeff Berwick, David Icke videos by chance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sent them out too. Yep. I got them from a couple of people, which is good.
I'm gonna link to the London Real interview. I think that I can just link to the private video, and we can get around the whole YouTube thing. Maybe I can't. Well, I'm going to put it in here. London Real does a deal where you can become a member for free. There it is. There's the David Icke interview. It's also on YouTube, but you can become a member for free. So throw your email in there and become a member and watch that interview. It is totally worth watching. It's a couple hours, the full-length one. There's a 45-minute version of it on YouTube. Also, we're checking out. Got my COVID cough here. Mike.
Hey.
Good seeing you. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, I didn't know if I could. I'm not. How's the mic sound?
It sounds buzzy, but your video looks great.
Okay.
Good morning to our YouTube followers. We got Eskimo Warriors all up in with the comments already, which is awesome. And we got 3 people streaming right now. So we were just talking about the David Icke interview. You sent a very interesting email that I wanted to talk about, Mike. But did you have a chance to watch that Icke interview? No is a fine answer.
I did.
Or disappear.
Uh-oh.
The corona got him.
That's probably it. I'm going to put up the link to the YouTube one here too. Okay, here's the YouTube one, and I put the London Real one up. Yeah, he'll be back. Anyway, so Icke sort of like acknowledges that maybe, there's kind of a flu thing going around, but why on earth would you realign the entire global economic system around like a bad flu? And he comments that it's 9/11 again. This is 9/11 without anything. There might not actually be anything. The whole thing might be made up. And, there are plenty of people who make the case that 9/11 was, orchestrated and constructed. And certainly the bin Laden part of it. A guy on a dialysis machine in a cave organizing this. But either way, the outcome was like a global realignment of stuff and all these temporary measures that went into place that were never removed. Like TSA and the blend. What's that?
Patriot Act.
Patriot Act. Mm-hmm. And then all these emergency powers, that are embedded in the Patriot Act. Exactly. So, this is like that, but on steroids. This is like 9/11 plus 2008 combined into one event that is so far a non-event. Like it appears to be kind of a non-event. Mm-hmm. And jump in on that, Mike. You had a really good email you sent out this morning about that.
Yeah, I hadn't seen David Icke's videos yet, or anyone else really. I've been trying to stay away from the conspiracy side of it, just to keep an open mind about it. But I can't do it anymore. It's so ridiculous to shut down an entire world economy. I mean, you look at United Airlines and American Airlines right now. That's absurd. And so I can't it's most
Not enough bandwidth.
Oh, I thought I was the one. I thought I was just cutting out.
Nope. Mike, when you pop back on, I got your email here. I can actually just read it out. I can read it out for it. Okay, I'm gonna read out Mike's email here. Yeah, we got some YouTube commenters. It includes the whole world, right? Which is part of what's genius about using this event, whether it's real or not. Okay, so here's Mike's email. He says, I haven't looked at the vids by Berwick or Ike yet. I don't know what they said, but I can guess. I've tried to stay away from any conspiracy, as we have, for sure. But I've come to the tentative conclusion that Corona is totally fake. There's no way a whole world economy would be shut down over a cold without ulterior motive. My thought is that all the numbers and all those maps from John Hopkins are fake. John Hopkins was a participant to Event 201. So I'm going to pause there. Event 201, for people who think that's a conspiracy, I'm going to pull it up. Event 201, you can find the videos of Event 201 on YouTube. And I'm going to put the link to the Wikipedia on it. There's Event 201. It was a scenario where there's a large-scale pandemic due to a coronavirus outbreak. And it was to run simulations on what the economic and political and social consequences would be. And it was run on October 18th, 2019, so just a few months ago. And, of course, who sponsored it? The Johns Hopkins Center for Health, in partnership with the World Economic Forum, in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So you have the medical side, you have the economic side, and then you have the vaccine side, which is inevitably where this is going. Okay, so that's Event 201, and you can find videos of it on YouTube. And they're like, oh, if this sort of thing happened, we would need to take over the economy, and we'd need to do all this stuff, everything they're doing now. And of course, they would say, well, we were just rehearsing, and now this is the real event. And so it's good that we had the warm up. But like the way it's playing out is exactly the way that their plan went. And there's a saying that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. In reality, like when you encounter a non-contrived situation, the situation's always way more complex than your plan. And so for everything to go exactly the way you planned it, it's just not possible. Like anybody who's run a business or tried to organize anything with any number of people knows that's the case. Okay, that's Event 201.
Wasn't it Eisenhower that said that?
I don't know who said that. That's a good no plan survives contact with the enemy. This guy said it. It's a German guy.
One thing that I was just say real quick about it is, I think we could even give the John Hopkins the map, right? Even if we say that the whole thing, as far as the map is concerned, that there is this COVID-19 that's hit all these places. I mean, because there are a lot of people that really believe it. But does that, even if that's going on, does that justify a world economic shutdown? But go ahead. I just wanted to say that real quick because
throwing Mike back in here. That's right. That's the question. Because it's like, well, can you put a price on somebody's life? But you're not. When we talk about the economy, we're not talking about money. We're talking about like people's ability to get what they need to survive, like healthy people, normal people, and sick people. And when you shut down the economy, the only avenue to get what you need is through those who are controlling it, which is governments. So it's not a choice of are people going to get sick or not get sick. It's a choice of is the flow of goods and exchange going to happen through people or through a control structure? Like, that's the real discussion here. It's a little bit, it's very similar to the, the pro-vaccine argument is, well, vaccines work, so everybody should get them. But if they work, then why would it be a problem for somebody to not get one, right? Who cares? If you don't get one, you can't get somebody who got one sick if they work. And so it's the same with this thing. If you self-isolate, you're not going to get sick. Like, that's true of the regular flu too. And so why is this stuff being made compulsory? Why is control of the economy being exerted? Like, there's a lot of old folks' homes, they're the high risk group. There's a lot of old folks' homes that actually do a restricted access thing during flu season anyway. So why does it have to be compulsory? Why does the Trump administration and all these guys have to buy, 1 billion face masks or whatever? Can they make them faster than the productive economy can? I don't think so. What's your, jump in on it, Mike. Oh,
So not over a bad cold, right? And you mentioned ID 2020. ID 2020 it's headed by Foundation. It is an implantable chip that is the idea. The way they're selling it is that everyone around the world will have an electronic verified, and that everyone deserves to have this because people who are stateless, there are people without bank accounts, and they all need to have to the economy. And so the idea is to have the implantable the record to it and your bank account to it. So what better opportunity than to economy, quarantining everyone in their house? And I think famine. One of the thoughts I had is Trump came out with this idea of $1,000 paycheck for everyone. I think it's 2 or 3 of them. The idea for everyone that makes under 100,000 is what I've heard latest. It changes here and there, but the universal income that's been bantered around for a few years. And so my thought is maybe what's about doing is just like a crack dealer offers little free crack. Then, oh, you want your check? Well, it's time to pay up. It's time to get them addicted. Then bring them in. Reel them in. And I don't know. That's this of me jumping out now because I just can't. I can't ignore it. What they're doing is so ridiculous that what they're doing is exactly what you do if you wanted to cause ground. I mean, I still get emails from a company that has tens of thousands of pounds of things like nuts, unused nuts, and raspberry puree, and anything you can think of that's going out of date. And it goes on sale for ridiculously cheap prices if you can buy the bulk. And there's plenty of food around. But is there going to be enough cash for people to buy it? That's the big question. And that's where the famine is. That's where the famine comes from. People can't buy it. The food's there. People can't buy it.
Mm-hmm. And that's like restricting shipping. Are you guys seeing this ID 2020 thing?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I think I'm done with it now. There's a link to ID 2020 in the comment section there. Yeah, people can't buy it. Right. The stuff is all here. Like, my company has all my inventory, but can I ship it? I mean, ultimately, my customers my customers aren't shipping to their customers right now because their products have been deemed, not critical infrastructure or whatever. And so I got all my inventory. I could assemble all my inventory, but my customers have no need for it because their customers can't buy it. It's not that demand has collapsed or whatever. It's just the government said, well, in this time of crisis, these goods can't move right now. And that's what you're saying with food. It's all there. They're not out of stock. Yeah, the shortage is a story. It's not a reality.
Right. Right, and people are absolutely terrified. I mean, I just went to the store, and there's plenty of food in some category, in most categories, and then the others are missing. Like most of the chips are gone, and all the bottled water is gone, and all the toilet paper and paper towels are gone. People just panicked and went out and bought, the first thing they could think of, and there's plenty of the other stuff around. And then I looked at the store. There's a few people walking around with their nose in their shirts, trying to keep from getting coronavirus. They're all in a panic. This is how you get a population to submit. You make them scared.
Mm-hmm. And there's a way. Well, you were talking about taking it seriously, not buying into the conspiracy. We have all in our own ways done that, and and not been that afraid of it. Like none of us have curled up in a ball, and we've all taken precautions for our loved ones and our families and stuff. But the main precautions to take are the ones around the control mechanism.
Right.
Like the real bear trap that's closing isn't a disease closing in on us necessarily. It could be, but it doesn't appear to be the case. It's the control mechanism shutting everything down.
Right, government response.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what we've been, our little Patriot Lament group here, a lot of what we've been doing has been responses based off of government responses.
Mm-hmm.
More so than we're absolutely terrified we're going to get sick and die from COVID-19, I think.
Yeah.
You could say that we're playing 4D chess.
Yeah. Well, I just looked at the news minus this morning. Yeah, I just looked at the news minus this morning, and apparently the Dunleavy has announced that no more than 10 people can gather in any place. Is that correct?
Probably.
Josh?
That's probably right.
10 people
does that mean the government has to go home?
I guess so. I was just thinking when I get back, at least 11 of us need to get together sometime.
I've been rocking that every day.
You haven't walled off parts of the house?
No, we did tell Juliet last night that she might have to go somewhere else because she's the 11th foot in the house.
Oh, yeah. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Them's the breaks, I think, is the saying.
What do you guys think another possibility, in America at least, this doesn't really account for the rest of the world, but in America, it's been heavily politicized in the fact that we're in an election cycle, presidential election. So you have a lot of media that hates the Great Orange, just going nuts at him, do more, do more, do more. And he's had to react to their demands because, you got Uncle Joe Biden over here saying, well, if I was president, this would all be solved. I'd have this done, blah, 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 blah. Because, when Trump first came out with this, he was just like, no big deal. We got it under control. We'll be fine. And the media just destroyed him. What an unthoughtful leader. Where is your leadership? Rah, rah, rah. And now, so he's gone from that to, in the span of a week and a half, I'm a wartime president. I'm a wartime president. Come on. But I think it's all been pushed by the election. A lot of it could be pushed by the election cycle. Was Trump the leader that he needed to be during a time of crisis? Dun, dun, dun.
A while back we talked about how when someone takes the office of president, they're as much a scapegoat as anything else. And
Yeah.
if he doesn't do something, he's accused of not doing enough. If he does do something, he's accused of doing too much. So what does he do? There's 320 million people with an opinion about what he should do, and every one of them's right. So I don't really put a lot of I don't put a lot of the blame on Trump, or maybe not any of it. I think there's people higher up who are responsible. He's just taking his orders, but I wouldn't want to be the guy, because basically he's just a scapegoat at this point.
No win.
Right.
I heard a good joke. How do you turn a Trump supporter into a Bernie Sanders supporter?
How's that?
Give him $1,000.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about, okay, so if we're using the 9/11 analogy, 9/11 happened, regardless of how it happened and it was bad, and it was like a real event, as could be the coronavirus, and you're put in a situation where if you distrust the U.S. government, and that it's a non-event, you're relying on the numbers to be accurate and low from other countries. So that means you have to believe China's numbers are low and Iran's numbers are low. Mm-hmm. But if their numbers are artificially low, it means that that the situation is a lot worse. Mm-hmm. In which case, that the U.S. has some inside information on what the counts really are, and they can't come out and say what's actually happening, but they can only adjust the response. So I think that there could be a case where both things are true. There's a serious reaction from the governments of every country, and there is something that's actually pretty bad about this and hurting people. And,
that's true.
And they're taking advantage of it. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question would be at what case count or death count is this considered a real event?
Yeah, I've thought about that. There's another layer of complexity to that too that I'll run by you guys before let me make some notes here. I don't want to lose, because your thought there is really good. I don't want to lose that thought. So this other layer is there it is. When is this a real event? Question mark. The other layer is because governments are the ones doing the counting and stuff, the entire game here is a political game. It's not like market driven. Let's say that this was like insurance companies. Let's say that travel insurance companies were insuring you for COVID-19, right, or the seasonal flu or something. They tend to track the likelihood of you getting something bad if you go to a certain jurisdiction. They look at what the care level is and all that stuff. If you ever bought travel insurance, that's the way it works. It's usually astoundingly cheap. Like I bought some when I went to Acapulco. It was like $35 for a week. And it was like $80,000 of coverage, which will like buy an entire hospital in Mexico. So, but that's not where the numbers are coming from. The numbers are all political. And so there's two ways you could play that game. If the virus were really severe, let's imagine that you're a country that has an adverse relationship with the United States, okay? And you underreport the numbers. You're like, you know what, let's game it. Let's way underreport so that they don't do anything. So when it hits them, it totally destroys their economy, right? That would be one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to say, let's say the numbers are really super high, even though nothing's really happening here. And let's stop shipping for a while so that they go into an economic panic, so that they destroy themselves by their reaction to it. And so, like, I was thinking about this the other day. You could play that game either way to win. It's like when you're when you're playing poker, right? If you got a strong hand, you can put a bunch of chips out, or you can and say like, I got this, and invite somebody to step up, and sometimes that works. Or you can like play it like you got a weak hand to milk more chips out of other people. So so hard to know. When is it a real event? I've been looking at that. Ron Paul has talked about the swine flu when he got elected. He's brought that up a few times. Like in the 70s when he got elected, there was like a swine flu thing that was going on. And they had an emergency program to vaccinate all of America. And I think they got which was, I don't know, 150 million people or something at the time, right? And I think they got 50 million people vaccinated just through the market. That many people got vaccinated. And then there was this emergency bill to vaccinate the other 100 million. And Ron Paul and this other guy, some Democrat guy who was also a doctor, got together and were like, what's going on here? Why is this? Does this make any sense? And they looked at that. They looked at how severe was the flu. And why would you vaccinate everybody? Who are the risk groups? Maybe you just vaccinate the risk groups. Why would you vaccinate 100 million people if the risk groups are just, old people or children or whoever it happens to be? And so they were the only two who voted no on it, I think. But then what happened was the entire thing ended up fizzling, and the people who weren't vaccinated didn't get sick anyway. And so I think the bill just died, and it was just all forgotten. But his metric was that in a bad flu season, it was something like 30 to 60,000 people would die of the flu in the States for a seasonal flu. There's some number like that. So this John Hopkins thing is, let me pull it up right now. Haven't been here in a while. It's globally, there have been 11,942 deaths. And this started in December, January, February, March. So a third of the year's gone by. And globally, which is 20 times the population of the United States, there have been 12,000 people, according to these numbers, who have died of this. So is it getting ready to go into high gear? Possible. I'm going to post the map here. I don't know. I think it's worth treating. I mean, it doesn't cost that much to treat it like a real thing, and I'm doing that. And we'll know in 2 or 3 weeks whether or not it is. It's all like a waiting game.
The stuff coming out of Italy looks not super good, because their hospitals are over capacity, and all the stories and the interviews with the doctors and nurses there appear to be that they're pretty overwhelmed by the number of people in their hospitals, and they can't bury the bodies fast enough, so they're trucking them out. So that the numbers themselves aren't that big, because I think their capacity to deal with anything is pretty low, just like here in the U.S. But it's enough of a sudden increase in bodies that need to be taken care of that they're having to truck them out.
That it breaks the system. Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, that's something that even Berwick, who's kind of poo-pooed the whole thing, he's sort of brought that up. He's like, don't know what's going on there. That's another one where it's like, we'll know in time, probably. There's the conundrum. Yep.
I was going to say there is a certain demographic that it's particularly hitting hard in Italy, though, too. And even then, what is it, 60 million people? I don't remember if Italy's 40 or 60. Let's just say 40 million people is the amount of elderly people that are passing away, which is not good. But does that justify locking down 60 million people and say you have to stay in your home, and we have the military and cops running around to basically shoot you if you don't stay in your home? I mean, what life do the people that stay at home have?
Well, do you guys remember the Easter Bunny report that was on Conan O'Brien? It was put on. There was multiple news stations and news networks across the nation reporting exactly the same quote. The Easter Bunny, a new spring in his step this year. Remember that?
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Okay. You know. Oh, and Conan O'Brien. It was put out as a comedy sketch because it was clips of reporters repeating exactly the same quote, different channels, different cities, different networks, exactly the same quote. Putting out that script. It's not ABC, it's not NBC, it's not CBS, it's not Fox, because they're all repeating the same thing. It's someone above them. So, how much of what you use is just social engineering from a central agency?
Hard to say. An interesting confounding factor for that too is that with house arrest, none of your usual YouTube reporters are out on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you guys remember with 9/11, right? With 9/11, there were supposedly all these kids dancing in the streets, burning U.S. flags, like, "Yay, Americans have died today, hooray!" And that was a totally made-up story. It was 100% fabricated, and there were actually some people who were in, Palestine and Syria and like in these places, like interviewing people, like, "Hey, what do you think about what happened in New York?" And they're like, "That's a tragic event." And so you had these other people out recording some of these things, and with the house arrest, you solve that problem, the problem of the independent media. So I don't know.
We can't go to the hospital and say, "Hey, we're looking at how many people you have hospitalized for COVID-19."
Or even with airplanes, right? There's all these nerds who sit at the end of runways and watch the tail numbers, right, and record where planes take off and land, right? And some of this is part of the 9/11 thing. If you ever go deep down the 9/11 conspiracy rabbit hole, a bunch of these guys like followed these end numbers around, and it's like, oh, those weren't civilian planes or whatever. Anyway, you have people who do that, and they post it on forums because they have nothing better to do or whatever. So you could even have people doing that with hospitals. Like, all sorts of people do things. It's like collecting stamps or whatever. There could be people doing that near hospitals, but with the lockdown, you solve that alternative information problem, so to speak.
Yeah.
What's funny too
Yeah,
is that they're not really even using the media I'm talking about. They're not really using the 9/11 event to compare this to. The last 3 or 4 days, it's all been World War II event. This is exactly like World War II. And in that, they're saying, because we're Americans, we're all going to pull together. The only way we pull together, just like the Greatest Generation did in World War II, was to do what you're told. It's hard now, but we'll pull together because we're all going to do it what we're told. So America, when we're one people, we can get through anything. So it's kind of funny because even though this is reaction-wise, the economy's been destroyed and shut down way longer than 9/11 was. And it might be like, well, they're creating it. They're making it be like World War II for the rest of us. Rationing and stay at home and no unessential work and blah. Are we even in World War II, though? You still got to go out and have fun, right?
I want them to bring back silver nickels.
That's what
I won't take this seriously until I can buy silver nickels for 5 cents.
Peter Schiff had a video a couple days ago where he compared it to World War II, but he went in a very different direction, and he said that in World War II, he said, I get it, it's different than a virus, but it's a very serious economic event, and people didn't stay home; they got to work. They didn't ask for help. They paid war bonds and they went to work, and that's how they dealt with the crisis. They dealt with it by being more productive, working harder, and not asking for stuff. And compared to today, that's a very different story.
Well, and how
That's
many
true.
companies are shutting down? I wonder how many companies are shutting themselves down so they can get the free money from the state. I mean, because it's almost coincidental. The relief package started coming out, and Trump starting to say, well, we're going to bail out the airline industry. And all of a sudden, these larger corporations like the car manufacturers and all this, oh, yeah, we're done too. We probably need $50 billion.
Yeah, it's the
well,
what they're. Go for it, Mike.
no, I was just going to say, didn't all Ford and GM and Chrysler shut down the factories? I saw that this week. Yeah,
Everyone
and
except
then-
Tesla.
Well, they're already getting the government subsidies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. To your point, Josh. Yeah, I was about. It was on Drudge. It was about the need to sacrifice. Uh, it's again just like World War II, and the need to sacrifice yourself without receiving sufficient, sufficient return. So that's what sacrifice is. So they're calling upon people to sacrifice for them. But in this time, they have to sacrifice by staying home and not working and starving eventually if they continue to do it.
This is the you guys remember John F. Kennedy's thing? Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
That's JFK. So Donald Trump's the opposite of that. He even said that. I heard his a little bit of his press thing yesterday, where he was like, this is kind of weird to be having an economic stimulus package that pays people not to go to work. Seems kind of like counterintuitive and stuff, but these are weird times, and what we care about are the workers. That's our main concern. And so in this case, we're going to pay people not to go to work, and that's going to be good for the economy. And it doesn't make sense, but don't worry about it.
Well, for him, it makes sense. I mean, he's buying votes.
Dunleavy style.
Yeah. Yeah, Dunleavy, for Alaskans, he said yesterday that he wants that round 2 of dividends immediately. $1,300 for everyone.
With what oil money?
Not only that, he also proposed He also proposed a $1 billion relief package on top of the 1,300 PFD for everyone. With what oil money? They're already broke.
Well, isn't their break-even point 70 a barrel? Something around that.
What's that?
And it's at 20.
High?
Is it? I think wasn't it, Josh? Was it $70 a barrel for break-even for a state operation?
40.
Is it 40 now?
State.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure what the state is, but
because of the way the tax structure is for it, the oil tax structure.
Yeah, right. It has to be. I think it's in the 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's in the 40s without his special dividend. I think it's in the 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Without. Yeah. Okay. I'm going back 3 years, from 3 years ago. But it's at 25 a barrel now. So they're going into the hole already.
Yeah. They're way in the hole. They're like worse than Sarah Palin into the hole, and that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Right.
I think they blew like half of their like half of the state's whatever you call it, their reserve or whatever. Palin liquidated like half of it, and they've been trying to rebuild it since then. And now it's like it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
And it's right, exactly. Yes.
Boom.
Yep. Here's second.
Go ahead.
I'm just looking at Dunleavy's stuff on the Alaska State page. House Bill 206 provides financial resources to the DHSS for COVID-19. Blah blah blah. $4 million in state funds. That's nothing. This is old though. Anyway, yeah, go for it, Corey.
I've already said it last week and I think the week before, but there's an idea floating around that OPEC Plus and Russia aren't actually in as much of a fight as it appears, and that by not coming to an agreement on the in their oil meetings, they're going to wipe out the shale oil producers in the U.S. and it will take them a long time to get back online, and it will because the shale oil producers have a high operating cost. They have a lot of debt, and when they default, it will be pretty bad on the economy as a whole, because all that debt gets repackaged and resold. So you have a bunch of debt collapsing now in a bunch of areas because the debt isn't consolidated. It's spread out over everything, just like 2008. Maybe not the same scale, but it will be a long time before banks are willing to finance shale oil production again if they lose out really big time. So then Russia and OPEC then have an open market. Once they have to survive long enough for the U.S. and Canadian shale oil to go out of business, and then they have a clear market to run on.
Right. It's like a short squeeze.
It's like Walmart and small shops.
Yes.
Yeah. So I found this Dunleavy thing. He's proposing an immediate $1,300 dividend and a $1 billion relief fund.
Throw that in the private chat, and I'll dump it into the main one here.
And then also, breaking news: Alaska villages are curbing all flights in. State closes schools. Alaska State closed all schools till May 1st. Now,
Well, wait, did you say they're curbing flights in?
into the villages.
Oh, into the village. Okay.
Which is the same as curbing them out too, because if no plane comes in, no plane goes out.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
also keep in mind those villages depend on flights to bring the food in.
Right. Is that people flights or cargo?
It has to be passenger
Well, a lot of
flights.
times it's mixed. A lot of
Right.
times it's mixed.
The combis.
Well, yeah, but they also the caravans and the smaller planes.
Oh, sure.
They pack the back full of cargo and the belly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I just got this: the Anchorage mayor of Anchorage, just issued a stay-at-home order for everyone in the city, starting tomorrow night.
But again, no state or city or company can now not issue that order, because they'll get sued into oblivion if they're wrong, even if it's not real.
You're
if they
absolutely
don't.
good point. Yeah. Really.
Once
good
a couple
point.
of the major cities did it, everybody had to follow suit.
Yeah.
Mimic contagion.
Yeah.
In its purest form. Can you throw that link in there, Josh?
Yeah, I'm just looking for it now. I also saw that he's his recall has taken a big dive.
Oh, Dunleavy?
Yeah.
I think he and Trump are playing the same game.
I saw a joke the other day that Dunleavy was signed his own recall because he doesn't want to be a governor during this. There you go. I found
Perfect.
Giving out free pens.
it.
So Mike has this email. I'm just gonna jump back to it because it's really good. Just get back to it here. Okay, the fake position, and using this to realign the economy, and it's like, at what cost? And I remember this. This is like one of my favorite Nine Inch Nails songs. I'm gonna post the lyrics just piece by piece here. It's the song "Head Like a Hole." So it starts off. Those are the lyrics. It starts off with "God, money, I'll do anything for you. Just tell me what you want me to." God, money, don't want everything. He wants it all. And then the pre-chorus is this: "No, you can't take it away from me." Blah blah blah. So I'm posting the lyrics up in the comments. And then the chorus is really interesting. There's the chorus: "Head like a hole, black as your soul. I'd rather die than give you control." And I've always thought that was interesting. I'd rather die than give you control. I've always wondered who you is in that. And one way to interpret that would be that you is God or is Christ. Like Nine Inch Nails lyrics are kind of it's this pursuit of my machine got weird. It's like this pursuit of money at the expense of everything, right? Everything else be damned. It's all about money and power. And then let's see. Yeah. And then the post chorus, I'll put that up, is that: "Bow down before the one you serve. You're going to get what you deserve." I'll post the link to the lyrics here. This is Nine Inch Nails' "Head Like a Hole" is the name of the song. And anyway, I've been thinking, like, that's basically on some level what is going on right now. I mean, there may be the disease may be serious. It doesn't appear to be like world ending, but it may be serious. But everybody is just using this as an excuse to pile in on the get as much as you can, like as quickly as you can, bandwagon, specifically with money.
Yep.
Yeah, once you open the tap, everyone lines up.
Might be a little lesson in there.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
we should get all we can because it's the end of the world.
Yeah, and even I'm thinking of companies that aren't lining up for bailout or handouts. There's a bunch of companies. I'm thinking of Tesla with the ventilators, and then some online services providing reduced rates and stuff. There's, on one hand, that's really nice, but on the other, it's like everyone's competing for PR to see who can outdo each other in giving free services.
Mhm.
Adam just posted a really good comment. What happens to a society when their economic literacy trends towards zero? I think you get to go back and learn first principles again.
Yep.
I think that's where we're headed here.
Yeah. Well, it seems that we can kind of. Yeah, I see. It seems that we can use Europe as a canary in the coal mine. We can kind of predict what's going to happen here just by looking at what happens in Europe. It seems to be so. We can look at the financial situation as well. It's going to be a repeat. So at least side, we do have that warning.
True.
So look at that as an opportunity, I suppose.
Very true. And even in those situations, so Adam, I think that's a really good point. Even when we go to zero understanding, and then like you said, Mike, we have the European example. We as individuals, and then as a community, like we're us for our community right now, and a couple of our friends who aren't on right now are listening. They're part of our community, our listeners here, and the people commenting on YouTube. We are not going to be. We're all tied together through like the fabric of society, but we all get to deviate a little bit, and it's in those margins. Like we're all going to be hit by this, and we all are being affected by it. But it's in those little marginal differences that we actually get to influence the course of events to some extent, and so that's where us having some clear thinking on it and taking some actions now, in the past, now, and then in the near future, really will make a big difference. Like over the next 20 or 30 years, some of the decisions that are made right now and in the next 2 or 3 months are going to have a bigger impact than decisions made at other times in that window. And so it's a time to discern, and it's a time to act, like right now, or in this window. And so that's part of what we're doing now, even if the economic literacy is going to zero and we get to learn everything from first principles again. You could think of it like the 1930s, right? And we're in 1929, and this is the crash. And there's probably a decade or two of difficulty ahead. But not everybody had a bad time in the 30s.
Right. Well, I did see an article that pot consumption has jumped. So yeah, if you have a pot operation going, you might do pretty well. Kind of like alcohol in the 30s.
Yep. Yep. There were a lot of productive ventures in the 30s that did well too. A lot of the service economy did really poorly, but a lot of productive ventures did well because people were like, you know what, I don't need a job that fulfills the deepest desires of my heart. I need a job that'll buy food for my family. And so a lot of people went back and got work, and they just were happy to have a job. And so there were a lot of boring, productive ventures that did really well because they actually had a pool of employees who appreciated having something to do that could provide for their family. And so that's a very similar to the situation that our world is in right now.
Yeah, so there are going to be those opportunities that pop up. There's, a crisis is it's a great opportunity to see the new opportunities. a lot of riches can be made out of a crisis, and it doesn't have to be dishonestly. It's just because people's focus tends to change, and when people's focus change, there's an opportunity for new products. Kind of like, well, did you get that email I sent you yesterday with that link, Dave?
I think maybe I did.
Okay, I sent it to your the one that starts with 5. So,
Oh.
yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
I'll have to send that to the rest of you guys too. Anyway, that is an example of an opportunity
I'm going to
that
put
can
the
come
link
out of
in.
this.
I'm going to put the link in the chat right now on the
Cool.
copper and viruses and bacteria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is that would not be hard to start.
Exactly. That's very true.
So, yeah, there's going to be a lot that comes out of this, I think, as opportunity if we don't get focused on, oh, woe is me. You know, they're going to they're going to try to control me. So as long as you're in the mindset that you have opportunity and you're not going to be controlled, then you're not going to be a victim.
David Icke had a point on that was interesting. So did Berwick. They both brought this up, and I think we brought this up too with some of our callers. Is that if you get into a fear-driven mentality, your long-term thinking dissolves. Basically, you become entirely short-term oriented.
Mm-hmm.
You become survival oriented, and then all of your decision making collapses. And sometimes you need to do that. Like I think David Icke brings up the point that like if somebody cuts you off in a car, you don't want to sit there and think about like the philosophical reason that they cut you off. You want your brain to hit the brake. So that's a good thing. But for a lot of this stuff, like this stuff's going to take a long time to play out. And there's a lot of stuff happening right now that just has to be navigated and acted on. But all the significant stuff is going to play out over the next, year, 5 years, 10 years. And so staying grounded and like you were saying, Mike, like identifying those long-term opportunities, we can do that if we're not entirely fear-driven. And of course, if we don't get sick, if this is real. So there's different. I think you're totally right about that. Seeing the opportunities and not being reactionary, but being like proactive.
Yeah. And as far as remember we're saying that the virus isn't real. We're just saying being used as a foundation for a greater, bigger intent. I mean, I carry, I have some Lysol wipes in the car. I mean, it's easy, but I'm not concerned that I'm going to get this thing and die.
Mm-hmm.
I just rather not have a sore throat for 3 days and maybe get bronchitis.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like we started out, every hoax has to be based on some real foundation, or it's not believable.
Yeah, half-truths. Half-truths are what that is. I think Rene Girard talks about that with his mimetic contagion thing. It's that the lies always contain a half-truth, which is what draws people in the first place. And then they build their entire framework on that half-truth. I have to peace out here for a second, guys. I will be right back.
Okay.
So I watched a kind of a timely documentary. It came out in 2019, and it's called. Let me do a screen share here. Share. Select window. Firefox. It's called Panic: The Untold Story of the 2008 Financial Crisis, and it's made by Vice, and it's of course on HBO. And so they interview Henry Paulson, Timothy Geithner, and Ben Bernanke, as well as Obama and the last Bush, and some other people that were in it. And the whole premise of the documentary is that without the action of the Fed, it would have caused a global depression, or at least a very severe depression in the U.S. And without their quick and brave intervention, that would have happened. And I think that's probably true, but I'm not. The whole premise that they made things better instead of lining us up for a much bigger problem down the road was not addressed. I don't think that they're even. It worked once, so they think that they can do it forever, just like QE, just like cash injections and bank bailouts. Once you go down that path, there's no incentive to stop. And I think that means that it gets, every time you do it, you're creating the setup for a larger problem down the road, and that just totally was not even a part of what the documentary got into. It was just like, we did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's an aspect to that gets ignored, and that's they gave all that money to the banks, and instantly the banks hoarded it, and so they had over $2 trillion in their reserves, which never happened before, and they weren't willing to lend to each other, and it's just gotten worse and worse. And so the issue was really one of the issues was really a lack of trust among the banks in lending. So that issue is worse today, and what they're doing and what they do now with the repo crisis is it's not the same as the QE thing. They're injecting money. They're injecting money into the overnight bonds and then swapping it back the next morning. So rather than there being more cash, it's just an overnight swap. And they have to do that to keep the velocity up, to try to keep the interest rates down. Because when they didn't do that, or they failed to one night, the interest rates jumped up to 10%. So now they've lowered the interest rates even more. And in order to keep the interest rates down, they have to inject even more cash, keep the velocity even higher. So it's not that they're putting more money into the system, it's that they're keeping the velocity up, keeping the swaps going.
This go around, though, isn't it a little bit different, because they're talking about injecting directly into the economy, like $1 trillion, with the guaranteed checks and all that, sending everyone $1,200 and all their kids $500. It's a little different when
that's a different side than. I mean, it all comes from the same place at the end of the day, but that's a different side than the market and the repo market operation.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is, when, like in past QEs, like Mike was saying, a couple $1 trillion went to the banks. This time we're looking at $1 trillion going into people's hands and literally flooding the private market, with $1 trillion.
Yeah, that's going to cause prices to go up because everyone has extra money to spend now.
Yeah, how could it not cause price inflation?
That's if they spend it. Now, if they do like the banks and they hoard it, then it's not moving in the system, so it doesn't cause inflation in that case. It's just sitting in their mattress, so to speak. So
Americans don't save money.
you could still have deflation even with more cash floating around, just because people are hoarding it, just like the banks did back then.
I just don't see many people hoarding it, though. They're going to spend it like wild people.
Right. Yeah. They
I mean,
may.
you get an extra $1,000. It's like, woohoo, let's go. And they're going to be buying TVs and nonsense. They'll flood them. They'll flood the market with $1 trillion.
Well, it's a
It's
good
so
time
much
to
different. I don't see them hoarding it like the banks do.
It'd be
Well,
funny if people started
it might
buying
be a good
silver
time.
with it.
Now that would be awesome if everyone bought metals or cryptos or something like that.
Well, the
But the
reality
checks
is,
would turn off real fast.
yeah, the reality is, it might be a good time to be a pot dealer in Fairbanks. I bet you that's where a lot of the money's going to go.
It'll end up devaluing the dollar. Getting it in the middle is the sweet spot.
Okay,
Yeah.
how about corporate debt buybacks, or not buybacks, but the Fed's purchasing corporate debt, and then similar but different is that a lot of these companies have been like Boeing, and a lot of companies have been doing stock buybacks because the market was going up, so they were getting they've been getting loans at a low interest rate and then buying their stock back as the market was going up. So that money, when the market went down, that money that they got on loan is just evaporated, until the market reaches the level that they purchased the stock at. And now they don't have money to operate, and they can't really sell at the lower price because they still hold that debt on their books. So they're kind of stuck. And then they're looking for a bailout.
And I think this go around, they're not allowing stock repurchases, stock buybacks.
Okay.
The Donald talked about that.
Yeah.
It's about the workers.
Workers
Right.
unite.
Yeah, it was a Bernie Sanders pitch. So you guys must be talking about price inflation. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, I talked about a documentary I saw. It was 2008 from the perspective of the Fed. They interviewed the Fed guys and then Bush and Obama. And they were talking about how without their swift and brave action whipping the banks into shape, we would have had a major depression. And I said that's probably true, but it also set us up for a bigger depression later on.
Mm-hmm.
It fixed the short-term problem, and it exacerbated the long-term problem. And it rearranged all the incentive structures for corporations and banks who know that once bailouts are on the table, your risk profile switches into a very, very high risk mode, and you're willing to do crazy stuff that would never happen in an uncontrolled market. You don't want to lose your money, but if you're losing other people's money, that's OPM, the best kind of money to spend.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well,
I don't see how there's going to be a conundrum if they do send all this cash out, because there's no way price inflation can't happen. I mean, it's just a natural thing. And if inflation starts getting too high, what does the Federal Reserve do? I mean, they're down to zero interest rates right now. They start raising interest rates to curb the hyperinflation that might happen.
Well, see, they almost need the inflation,
for the debt.
right? Like they kind of need it. I mean, that's the conundrum that they're in. Like deflation, they were always talking about how bad deflation would be, and like during 2008, I never really got it. It was like, what do you mean? Who cares?
yeah. Well,
Who will they blame the inflation on? I think is maybe another question.
A free market,
No doubt,
capitalism.
corporate greed.
Yep. It can't be cash injections into the economy out of nowhere.
I was
I mean,
looking for a clip, but a couple of days ago I saw Trump say, maybe it was a week ago, I saw him say that they were lowering the interest rates so they could refinance the national debt. I think I found it.
I heard that.
no.
Yeah.
They
I
lowering
don't know
it further.
who. Well, it's at zero. And isn't it going to be kind of hard to restructure when you're adding $5 trillion every few months?
With negative rates.
Well,
You could set the rate negative at
because they're
the.
paying you to have the debt, then just let it go, right?
If you made the
Put it
rate
in the negative interest
negative, if you made it negative with the amount that the U.S. goes into debt every year, then it would pay for itself. So if you had $20 trillion of debt at a negative 5%, then you could increase your debt load by $1 trillion a year, and it would stay at 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got to get people to pay you $1 trillion to hold T-bills or whatever.
I got the link to him talking about refinancing. It's in private chat.
Oh, there it is. I'll throw it in here. Do you want the starting at 34-second part?
Yeah. That's where he jumps in.
Boom.
Eskimo Warrior said, "Why don't we just give all the control to the churches? Let them decide how to fix the mess." You guys want to take that bait?
To the
What would churches do with $1 trillion?
Wait, was he talking about money?
I don't think it matters who it is. Anytime you give someone a gigantic bunch of money, it will corrupt them.
Right.
No, the point is not to let anyone have control. That's the whole problem. It's like, even if this virus is the worst case scenario, and it's going to be for the next, now they're talking about 18 months, being in this mode for 18 months. I saw that all day yesterday and the day before. Does it justify them doing that to us? I mean, we don't believe in having a state.
Right. And they're talking about martial law.
So how do we?
A year and a half.
Right. We don't even believe in having a state. So how can we? Where do we start with other people that do believe in it? Are they still justified shutting you down? Are they justified to demand you voluntarist that you stay in? Rick nailed that.
Well, no.
Rick says that if you gave the church trillions of dollars, if Bible Baptist Church ended up with any, they'd probably buy a nuke.
That is so perfect.
Oh, man.
But I mean, the big push right now is more government, more government. We need more government. And, if only the world was working together better and all this stuff. And there's no justification. Why does a guy that lives in a White House get to tell all of us we have to stay home? I mean, wouldn't we all, if we were convinced that this is an emergency as they're saying that it is, we would all do things individually to protect ourselves without them telling us what we have to do.
There's some risks that are technically difficult to understand, and unless you have some knowledge of medical stuff, you will underestimate the
Does
risk.
that matter? I mean, where I'm getting at is, do we need a state? Has this proven that we need a state? because there's some risk. Some people won't take care of themselves. Some people will do things that'll put other people at risk. But now, if we have this national government that can demand you are quarantined, they can demand you have to stay home. This whole state has to stay at home. This whole city. I'm closing all the restaurants in town. I mean, most
Yeah,
of
but I
them
don't
even have that kind of power
I don't
structure.
see people taking care of themselves before the virus happened, and nor have I seen people really taking care of them. I mean, some people are. Some people have food, and they're limiting their contact. They're doing the right things, but a lot of people are totally ignoring it, which gives the government the it allows them to step in when people aren't behaving well to each other. It gives the government more of a reason to step in.
But we're assuming that we know how people behaving correctly or incorrectly is.
Right.
And that's a pretty big assumption. We're individualists where we say, hey, you can't tell so-and-so what to do. It's up to him. Make up his own mind. I mean, we're literally on the verge to destroying the possibility of individualism, voluntarism. We're basically at the verge of we have to have a state. I mean, it's a lot easier right now using this COVID-19 to say we need a state than it is to argue against it.
Mm-hmm. That's what makes it a good narrative. Adam threw that in the chat. He said, "Can we acknowledge that it's a difficult social organization problem, and that current market forces aren't adequately solving it?" I think a good response to that would be yes. And I think the question isn't. The way the question is posed. Okay, he's throwing some more in here. Sometimes you objectively do know that someone is going to be harmful, but not always. Yeah, and then I'm not taking the position that we need a state, but it is a problem. Okay, that's a really good position to take. This is Adam in the chat. So, new situation, inadequate response. That's the nature of new situations, right? Is you got to figure them out, and so you're wrong at first, and so the question isn't is the market responding perfectly to this, or people, individuals, whatever. The question would be is the state response better? And that's not so easy to answer. I think the only thing that's easy to say is that the state response will be more more widespread and broadly sweeping and enacted faster. I think those are all things you could say, but I don't think you could say that that's better. But nobody's talking about better right now. They're all in the reptile brain. They're all in their reactionary brain. Hit the brake pedal as fast as possible, because we're all going to die.
Right. I mean, human beings have gotten through problems that killed a lot of people, the Black Plague, stuff like that, where before we had states, nation states, people still survived those. And again, even if it's the worst, we're seeing everything through the lens of having a state right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what situation we would be in if we didn't before the virus hit. Which, it's not really feasible to really talk about that because it's not what we're living in. But what's our position going to be to people that say, oh, yeah, you stupid anarchists, you'd all be dead now. Rawr. Of course we need a government. Because everything we're getting inundated with is just like the joke that Corey told. How do you make him a Bernie Sanders supporter? Give him $1,000. That's absolutely true.
Well, can they prove?
Absolutely.
What's that, Mike?
Can they prove to you that you would be dead? It's a
You only get to run the experiment once.
Right. It's a baseless assumption. You don't have a time machine, so you can go backward things and try it again with new conditions.
But what if it is? What if they can prove that you'll be dead? Does it still justify a state not only existing but demanding that everyone stay at home, demanding that all these restaurants close down?
No, because
And
then you might die of famine.
flat socialism. It's fascism in the real words.
Adam brings up a point in the chat that I think is interesting, and we can address. He says, how could people coordinate to deal with a pandemic like this in a decentralized system? And so I'm going to repost the link that Mike posted to the Vice article about copper being an antibacterial. And there's a paragraph in there that's worth checking out. Okay, there's a bunch of paragraphs in there, but here's one of them. In the 1865 Paris epidemic, 6,176 people died of cholera out of a population of 1.67 million. That's 3.7 people out of every 1,000. But of the 30,000 who worked in different copper industries, only 45 died, an average of 0.5 per 1,000. So it was 7.4 times. So 740% less lethal for people who worked in copper industries. This is just an observation. Nobody was working in copper to keep themselves from getting sick. But this is a way of how decentralized systems solve a lot of problems. When a bunch of people are doing a bunch of different stuff, it's unlikely that a single event passing through is going to affect everyone the same. This is how aviation safety systems are done. If you're not at Boeing, is they will build. You have to have two computers that are redundant, and the computers have to have different processors, and they have to run different types of code. The code base has to be different. That way, if a certain type of hardware glitch comes through, it'll only blow up one of the chips, or it's more likely to only blow up one of the chips. And if there's a bug in the software or the way the software executes, because they were written separately, they're functionally identical, but they're not made out of the same pieces. So they're not susceptible to the same causes of failure. And the more uniform your society is, the more susceptible it is to single points of failure. Like single failure modes that wipe out multiple systems, because all those systems are self-similar. And so this happened during the Spanish flu. I've been looking for the articles. I can't find it, so this is kind of apocryphal. But in the Spanish flu, 1918, the traditional communities in Pennsylvania, the Amish, were virtually unaffected. I'm going to find the article for that, but they were virtually unaffected for whatever reason. They were just sort of like they had high immunity to it or whatever, but they didn't get whacked with it the same way. I don't know why. That happened in various places. Like whenever there's these outbreaks, that happens in various places. The reason for the Black Death, big reason for the Black Death, was that everybody agreed that cats were a bad omen in Europe, and so they started killing all the cats. So what do you get when you kill all the cats? You get a bunch of rats and mice, right? So everybody agreed on something, and that set the preconditions for the disease to have such impact. So it's like widespread disagreement and differences of behavior. Diversity is our strength. That's what I'm saying. And state coordination does facilitate a swift, uniform, widespread response. Yes, but that's not a robust system, generally speaking. Adam says, interested in how a society can be organized such that it is prepared for black swan events, like a public health crisis that A, requires correct info from authorities, and B, requires coordinated effort. Yeah, that is interesting. And again, you don't get to choose between your perfect. You don't get to choose between your perfect systems. You get to choose which ones can adapt to it the best. That's sort of like the reality of existence, is that everything sort of is flawed. Like if you don't accept that everything's flawed and imperfect, then you spend all your time chasing the perfect. Perfect is the enemy of good. That's another way to say it. And the state always says it has the perfect solution, but it never has any examples of that, historically speaking. It says it'll be different this time.
One more point to add to Adam's thing is time scale. So let's just take the example of pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals are cheaper to manufacture in other countries, but if you run out, it's bad news for you. So if a bad pandemic comes once every 100 years and you need to have active running pharmaceutical labs in your country so that you can have your own supply, that means that you have to pay to run those at below market. You have to run them at a loss compared to other, at a reduced comparative advantage for 99 years. And I think that if you're going to do that, the only people that would do that is, or be able to, is the government.
Would you guys,
good at running things at losses
for hundreds of years? It's another timescale question. So that's a really good example. There's a fun illustration of that, of two different governments. There's the government of Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, and they built a dike system that was not designed to handle a 100-year flood. The problem is 100-year floods happen about every 100 years, which actually isn't as long as it sounds. And so when Katrina happened, they got wiped out. And so a lot of people go, that's a failure of government. Well, the government in the Netherlands also has a dike system, and it's designed to withstand like double what the 1,000-year flood would be. Like they have much better record keeping going back much further. It is the old world. And they said, you know what, in 1,000 years, the water level's unlikely to get higher than this. Let's double that and then build our dike system that high. And so there's a cultural time preference aspect to that as well. And like weighing the crisis, like, wouldn't it suck if our neighborhood got really legitimately flooded, like whatever? And people in New Orleans said, yeah, that would suck, but it's better to embezzle money than to actually solve the problem. So there's a cultural side to that too.
If I steal the money, I can build a dike around my house. That's a lot cheaper.
Right. And that's like
build
this.
a taller house.
Yeah, built a house on stilts. You see that when the Mississippi floods every 5 years or whatever. There's always these pictures of farmers who have done that. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of W. Edwards Deming. Massive fan. I'm gonna post his Wikipedia here. Like, he's not an economist. Well, I don't know what you'd call him. He's an engineer.
Process guy.
Yeah, he's a process guy. I actually find his stuff more interesting than economics these days because it's all action oriented, and that's something that I'm interested in. He has this 14 points, and I think to Adam's question about how do you have organizations that can deal with these large uncertainties and reorganize themselves as needed. Deming has these 14 points for business effectiveness, is what he calls it. And I'm going to rattle them off real quick. And then he has the 7 deadly sins, which are equally interesting. So his 14 points. Point number 1 is create consistency of purpose towards improvement of product and service. The aim to become competitive and to stay in business and provide jobs. That's number 1. Number 2, adopt the new philosophy. We're in a new economic age. We need to take on leadership for change. We need to have leadership that is okay with change and changing environments. Number 3, cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. Eliminate the need for massive inspection by building quality in the first place. So build something that's good, and you don't need to have a bunch of people checking on it all the time. You don't need OSHA regulations if your society and your companies understand that healthy workers are better than injured workers. It's that kind of idea. And with your product, like this used to be an American thing. It certainly is a Japanese thing because they were big fans of Deming. Like American cars, they used to be the best built cars in the world. So you didn't need to say, hey, our cars don't suck anymore, you should buy them, because people knew they were good. But now it's not the case anymore. Number 4, end the practice of awarding business on the basis of a price tag. Instead, minimize total cost. Move towards a single supplier for any one item on a long-term relationship of loyalty and trust. That's totally been forgotten. But again, that works if your culture is good, if you have people you can trust. Number 5, improve consistency. Improve constantly and forever the system of production. And your goal is to improve quality and productivity, and thus decrease cost. So you don't try to decrease cost. You try to increase quality, increase productivity, and then cost savings come as a result. Number 6, institute training on the job. This is another forgotten one. This is like how you get away from compulsory school, is you do training on the job. 7, institute leadership. The aim of supervision should be to help people do a better job. Supervision of management is in need of an overhaul, as well as supervision of production. So instead of supervising, instead of a nanny state or a nanny company where you look, you watch everybody all the time, you institute leadership. So you encourage people to take ownership of what they're doing. Again, like with anytime there's a crisis, government does the exact opposite. It says, we're here. You don't need to do anything. Just stay in your homes. Number 8, drive out fear so that everyone may work effectively for the company. Certainly not something the government does. Number 9, break down barriers between departments. People in research, design, sales, and production must work as a team to foresee problems of production that may be encountered. Number 10, eliminate slogans, exhortations, and targets. Instead, so he says that these exhortations create adversarial relationships because everybody's measuring everybody else. Instead of working towards a common goal, you're saying, your team didn't hit its numbers last quarter and we did, so you guys suck. But in fact, like sales and marketing and production and design and assembly, these all work symbiotically. So you want to get rid of those metrics. 11, remove barriers that rob the hourly worker of his pride of workmanship. The responsibility of supervisors must be changed from sheer numbers to quality. Number 12, remove barriers that rob people in management and in engineering of their right to pride of workmanship. So he encourages the abolition of a merit rating. And instead, this idea of leadership again. Like if somebody does a good job, encourage them and give them more responsibility instead of giving them little bars to jump over. 13, institute a vigorous program of education and self-improvement. Like, fantastic. That's unschooling right there. Number 14, put everybody in the company to work to accomplish this transformation. The transformation is everybody's job. Like that's a very libertarian principle right there. I'm going to put that one in the chat. It's everybody's job. And it's not everybody's job in we all have to march to the same drum, and worship the state or whatever. It's that everybody in their role, in the little thing that they do, to the degree that they can improve the quality of what they're doing and take a position of leadership, whether it be on the assembly line or whatever, it works towards the function of the unit of the company as a whole. So here's the 7 deadly sins. I'm just going to post them in the chat. And they're pretty much the way that government works. Lack of consistency of purpose is number 1. Emphasis on short-term profits and goals is number 2. Evaluation by merit rating or annual review of performance. This is what elections. Yeah, exactly. 4, mobility of management. This is the whole climbing the political ladder. 5, running a company on visible figures alone. He doesn't get anything done. We need politicians who get things done. 6, excessive medical costs. I'm not even going to comment on that. 7, excessive costs of warranty fueled by lawyers who work for contingency fees. So, yeah, I don't know what that would be. I mean, that would be basically, oh, we broke the economy. Sorry, here's a few $1 trillion to fix it. Like the cost of fixing it. The cost of fixing it is always more expensive than the cost of not breaking it. So that's Deming's stuff. He has this book called Out of the Crisis that I've been reading. It's amazing, and I think it applies on a business level and on a personal level. I'm going to post it I'm going to put the Amazon link. Mind you can't buy it. Maybe because Amazon might not ship it. Anyway, towards the the goal of personal action for us, like, what do you guys think? What's the thing to do in the next month or two?
Well, it depends on how. If the problem's artificial, then there's nothing that you can do that will demonstrate to most people that you're acting in good faith. If you think the problem is real and you take your own precautions and you rob the government of their requirement to respond, if people are helping themselves, then they don't need as much external help, and then there's no good reason to step in and quarantine.
So even in a world where we are locked up in our houses and we have to do what the government says or whatever, which appears to basically be the case for everybody right now. What can we do? What can we do in that scenario where, because it might be a thing that's the right thing to do, but what can we do for like 6 months to a year to 2 years out right now, even if we're cooped up? I think there's a lot. It's just so even in that scenario, what do you think?
Well, part of the problem right now with the immediate problem is it's hard to be proactive, which is what you're talking about, being proactive. Because a lot of what we're doing right now is all reactive. It's reactive to, whatever state edict comes out every 4 hours. We have to react to that. So it's pretty hard to, we're going to get into it, obviously, or you wouldn't have brought it up. It's pretty hard to get into how to be proactive when you don't know in 4 hours what the next action is going to be by the state that you'll have to take, reactive measures to. Mm-hmm. And if they're talking about the next 18 months, is that, God, if they're talking about being like this for the next 18 months, we could be constantly reacting to survive individually. Now, I don't mean just like survive, being alive, because I think part of the problem of this whole thing is not just actually being alive, but survival of your business, your way of life, happiness, all that kind of stuff. That's included in on that. Mm-hmm. Not going crazy, jumping off the ledge. But proactive stuff that we've talked about is small things. I'll just to get the thing started. Like we've been watching the precious metals, right? This last week, silver to gold ratio was 125 to 1, and that's outstanding. And we talked about if you have a couple gold coins, might be the right time to go swap them out for silver. Because when things correct themselves and the ratio's back to 80 to 1 or 90 to 1 or whatever, you'll have made a great profit margin on very small action. I think I figured if with 4 coins the other day with at 125, if you trade in 4 gold pieces, you'd get 500 silver pieces. And if it dropped back down to 80 to 1, it was something like a $3,500 gain in your small investment. Wow. Oh, is that silver? Anyway,
So here's
that's
gold.
kind of a proactive thing.
That is a proactive thing. And so here's gold. Here's iShares Gold Trust. This is a gold ETF. Corey very well timed his exit from the market, and very suggested that I do the same, and I did. And I jumped into iShares Gold. IAU is the symbol, and I bought a bunch of this. And you can see, yeah, it's down from its peak, but it's up for the year. Gold's generally up for the year. Here is the iShares Silver Trust. It's on sale right now. It's on sale. This is for the last year. So the ticker is SLV. And so if you have like any sort of mutual fund program or trading thing or whatever, you can buy this. You just type in ticker SLV and you say, I want $1,000 of this or whatever. So this is a way that you can buy silver cheap, and you don't have to wait for delivery or anything. And I am probably going to buy some of this next week, like on Monday. And yeah, that's a proactive thing.
Funds to clear to Monday morning.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and then there's other
it
stuff.
rebounds to $20. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying, Corey?
There's other stuff you can do, which I've been terribly amiss at, but reading, learning new skills, not watching the news, and using the time to make yourself smarter and better and more useful to your neighbors.
Yeah, that's true. We have you and I have some projects that I've been putting off forever because I've been busy with stupid stuff that's necessary. And with everything on hold, there's some real opportunities to sink our teeth into that. And then there's some other projects that involve Mike as well. And I'm finally going to put together the plan, and we can start looking at that to be ready to go once the world turns back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Well, one thing that I can say that has come out of this is I've been talking to people a lot more. Just everybody's become suddenly available and they're bored. So I've been doing a lot of Skype and Zoom meetings and stuff. And I've heard similar things from other builder types and non, just people that say the same thing. I've always had these projects going on and never gotten around to them, and now's a good time. So that they've started working on it, whether it's coding or building or
could learn to code.
Hashtag.
Reload bullets. Good kind of reload bullets.
Adam brought an important point up with reloading bullets. He sent me a message about it. He said, is it ethical to reload bullets if you don't wipe them down with alcohol swabs? You might infect somebody you shoot.
Or maybe they're more effective, yeah.
It wouldn't be social distancing at that point, though.
Yeah, you're closing the gap there. Could be unsafe for the rest of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, fixing up the house. There's a lot of things to do. What is your?
I like Eskimo Warrior's last comment. So basically, you need to get closer to the ones around you and make sure that you are helping be a leader. That's help your neighbors. Sorry, you were saying?
Oh, I was just going to ask Mike. Like, what's your outlook for the next, month, 3 months, 6 months, year?
Yeah, well, once I return back home, I am probably going to start putting together some of those plans that you and I have been talking about, and researching places to do it.
Property will probably be on sale.
That's kind of where I'm thinking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot of things will be on sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I on there twice? There we go.
Yeah, I have a friend in Reno that had some property that they sold in November, and it was kind of like I'm not sure what caused him to do it, but it was definitely good timing, and he had some other ventures that he was planning on using that money to fund, and just happened to sell at what I think will be the high of the Reno market, which is, for those that don't know, Reno, the housing is just absolutely crazy because they're so close to California and people are moving out of California. Average rent for a tiny apartment is like between $1,400 and $1,600 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, property projects will be looking pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And if the virus is serious, there'll be a glut of housing anyways.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting angle. There's
But you won't need universal income at that point. Everyone will have houses.
right. Everyone will have houses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good time to refinance too.
Mm-hmm.
I am planning on doing that, and the way to do that is to have your paperwork ready so that you can jump when the rates bottom. You want to be ready so you can get in when the rates bottom out, because that'll be huge. I mean, if rates, well, I don't know, like home mortgage is already at like 3.75 on a 30-year, so they could get down to like 2 or 1.5 or something like that. So that's thousands of dollars you're not going to have to pay the bank.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are. I'm going to list some action items
What
here.
about people in the comments? Any other stuff? Things to work on?
Yeah. Anybody in the live chat? We got a few people in there. If you guys have stuff you're going to jump in on.
It's a honeydew list.
Exactly. Good time to do those. How are you going to go about? What's your angle on silver, Josh? Like, physical appears to be hard to get right now. Nope.
Doesn't want to talk about that one.
Out.
Yeah, a friend was looking for some gold to pick up, and contacted their local coin store and was told that most things are out.
Okay. Do you guys know how Alaska Rare Coins is looking downtown in Fairmix?
Mm-mm. I know somebody sold there recently that I was talking to, and they were very surprised that somebody was selling right now, but it was cash in hand type thing. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Adam in the comments says he's working on some code and working on a remote job search. That's interesting. Remote jobs are probably going to be a lot more prolific after this because a lot of companies are going to have the tools to do it.
Yep.
And people are going to start getting used to it.
Go ahead. People are going to be better at it after this.
Yeah.
Remote work is surprisingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Eskimo Warrior says he's looking at buying another building in Eagle River. Yep. It's going to be a good time for that. Yeah, you're looking at commercial property in the valley, right, Mike?
Yeah, we're looking at that area. So, We'll see what pops up.
I was thinking this would be a great time for people that have sailboats to go do that long around the world tour thing that
Yeah, sure.
too difficult to schedule normally.
Yeah, come back when it's over.
Yeah.
We got you, Josh. Not yet. Oh, cool, Adam. Yeah, Adam's working on remote stuff. Rick says, not really changing my plans, concerned about transferring my cash accounts into something substantive. What would you consider substantive, Rick?
I haven't been able to find anything in the news, but I was listening to a video talk from a guy in Australia that said that banks are making it difficult to withdraw large funds from their accounts. It's not a hold, but there's a couple day delay, and the banks are asking lots of questions.
Mm-hmm.
They're slowing down the they're tightening the valve, so to speak.
An unofficial pinch point.
Yeah, there's coming to be a shortage of dollar cash because of all the Europeans trying to convert because of their issues.
To dollars.
Yes.
Right.
Actually, dollars is a good thing to hold right now.
It is. The dollar index is above 100 right now, which is crazy.
Yeah. I transferred the money this week out of a bank account into a market account, and then I did nothing with it. So it's just ready to do something, but I did not change it out of dollars.
I wish that I had moved. The dollar index is at 102.4 right now.
Well,
And I wish I was heavier into dollars. I have my company banks in dollars because I'm a U.S. exporter. I export to the U.S. and I pay my employees in Canadian dollars. And Canadian dollars are way down compared to U.S. dollars right now. The exchange rate's 144 right now, which is crazy. It's usually about 130. So I get a 14% increase in my USD transfer right now, which is awesome. So my fixed costs like rent, utilities, and employee salaries just went down 14%. So that's something I'm going to take advantage of. I'm going to do some big USD to Canadian dollar transfers and get my payroll into Canadian dollars for the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
How are you, Josh? We were trying to ask you what do you think the best way to get silver is right now? Like with the reported shortages, can you place an order and just have it filled when it's in stock, or what?
I think I'm not working.
Oh. We can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh no. A little more.
Schiff was saying that his whatever's bullion company, they're a month behind, but you get to buy at current price. So you buy at current price, and then he said that they fill when the mines produce it. So you're getting very new metals out of the ground.
Who is that? What's the name of that?
I think it was Peter Schiff's stuff. Doesn't
Peter
he do...
Schiff. Yeah, he does. Do you remember the name of that company or whatever it was?
Schiff Gold.
Oh, and they do delivery?
Yeah. They send it in the mail.
That's cool. Yeah, and a month delay is not a big deal. That's a cool way to go for physical. The downer or physical. So like I have a little bit of palladium and I wanted to get rid of it like a month ago. when it was actually worth getting rid of. And the problem with physical is you have to like go someplace and get rid of it. And I
This would
missed
be a great time for Adam to jump on about crypto.
It would be. It would be. That's the nice thing about ETFs as well. But yeah, you can hold gold and silver and all those things in crypto.
I have been hearing a little bit of stuff about the ETFs, the paper gold breaking from the physical gold because there's a shortage of physical, but there's lots of ETF gold. And that's about all I know about it, is that there's a shortage on one side and plenty on the other side, which usually means that if things get too crazy, something breaks.
Josh knows some stuff about that, and if he can get on the stream again, he'll be able to tell us about that. He called somebody, or he read some articles about that, and the story was something along the lines of a lot of industrial silver has been sold into the market, because like if your company had stock and you just hit the stop button, you have 100-ounce bars. You sold it into the market. You put it in the mail. It's in the mail, and so that suppressed the spot price. But it has to be processed into coins before it can be sent out to people. So there's a lag. He was told that there's a lag between that, and it's not a conspiracy or anything like that.
Okay.
But it's a lag. So we'll see. We'll see.
Just as an anecdote, during the Manhattan Project, they needed a bunch of coils for one of the enrichment processes, and all the copper was being used in planes and tanks. So they took all the silver from the government and turned it into wire, shipped it on trains as bars, and then at the end of after the project, they shipped it all back and turned it back into ingots.
So it's all nuclear?
I know. I think it was safe.
I'm going to take a Geiger counter to my silver eagles now.
There you go. Some are, some aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. More YouTube comments. Some physical palladium buyers and sellers. Yeah, I appreciate that. There is a guy in Canada where I'm at here. There's a Kitco authorized reseller. They're like 30 minutes away. They're not that far away. It's just like I never had a window of time to make the trip, or I didn't make the time to make the trip, and so now it's down $1,000, and it's like, well, it would have been nice to have sold it when I wanted to, but it wasn't. I couldn't get on my phone and like sell. So it's totally my fault on that. But that is one of the upsides of ETFs versus physical.
There's a let's see, Eskimo Warrior is talking about guns in the chat. There's also just like the virus, there's a herd immunity with guns, where if people know that guns are flying off the shelves, it makes it makes non-gun owners safe as well, to a point.
To a point. Yeah. Well, I don't know if Josh is gonna make it back. Do you guys have any
way you can? Can we talk about inflation versus deflation? Because I've heard both, and it sounds complicated.
Yeah, that would be really good, because price inflation, the road from here to price inflation is a good one to talk about, because that's going to be one that we can all take action on too. Mm-hmm. What is your angle on that, Mike? What do you think happens with all the money coming in, and how does that play out?
Armstrong has a lot of good writing about that. And what he'll point out is that when you talk about the hyperinflation, when you get the hyperinflation, that's when people have lost confidence in the system that they're in. So like Weimar Germany, people lost confidence due to the communist revolution that had occurred there. And so they the blame gets put on printing money for the hyperinflation, but in reality, it was the loss of confidence in that government, in the issuing party, and as a result, they started printing more money, and then it just became a cycle. So the when it comes to the Fed in the repo markets, we touched on this a little bit ago when you had to jump off, was um, in the repo market, they're not increasing the amount of money. What they're doing is they're increasing the velocity of the swaps. So they send out they issue bonds. The Fed buys it up. The next day it gets swapped. So it's basically keeping the velocity up to keep the interest rates down. If they start issuing, back when they did QE, they handed a bunch of money out to the banks, and they ended up with the banks just hoarded it and ended up with a reserve of over $2 trillion, which has never happened before. And so that money never entered the economy. It was there. It existed. It was produced and backed by bonds that were sold off to foreign countries, but it never entered the economy, so it didn't become inflationary. And then now, if you're talking about people getting $1,000 checks, the question becomes, will they go out and spend it, or will they hoard it? If they hoard it, it's not going to be inflationary at all, and it'll be deflationary because they're hoarding the money. It's not moving around anywhere. If it's just sitting in someone's mattress, it's no different than if it was never printed up in the first place.
Okay, so the answer to the question, will things become inflationary or deflationary, has to do with how each individual perceives the problem and what they choose to do with the money.
That's basically it. It will depend on people's response. If they're panicked and they're saying, "I need this cash for money for food next month," that'd be deflationary because they're keeping it, they're holding it back, and and then you have the issue of the Europeans trying to get out of the euro and exchanging everything for dollars. So then you have a dollar shortage, which would be which would also be deflationary.
Do you think? Run that by me with the Europeans.
So loss of confidence in the euro, they exchange it out for dollars and similar index.
So that pushes the value of the dollar, the perceived value of each dollar up, because there's greater demand for it than there is for goods with dollars.
Right.
Okay. With the $1,000 or whatever it ends up being going out to each American, I wonder if they'll be able to hoard it, because like people are so incredibly hand to mouth these days. I think by the time they get that check out, most people will be behind on their rent or whatever. What do you think about that?
Well, if it turns out that they're not making any money because they're not going to work, if they're getting less money from the government handout, they're only going they can choose to either spend it on what they need to survive, or they can choose to spend it on machines or whatever. If they choose the food they need to survive, well, that's what they spent it on before, plus the snow machine. Now, if they have to throw the snow machine out of the equation, they're spending less money. So it's less money flowing around the economy.
What time? Okay, there's less flowing around. How do you see? So there's the other side of that, right? Which is that as people default on mortgages and stuff like that, that'll start to collapse this debt bubble, right?
Yeah, well, there's also the proposal being floated around for a 9-month moratorium on mortgage payments, on foreclosures. I mean, that's just something that's been discussed. So if that happens, then the foreclosures get put off for a year.
So this pushes the inflation out. Well, that would be a
Mhm.
deflationary force, right? It'd be a collapse in the money supply.
Yeah, and then because you're gonna have all these houses out there. No one's gonna have money to make the down payment. It's available for them to get.
Hmm.
So then house prices. So then you end up with an issue of no bid, where house prices just fall because no one has any cash to buy them.
So so what do you see the waves of inflation and deflation looking like as this $1,000 is given out to everybody, and then as this debt default goes on and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. If it continues, I would see a deflationary situation with a shortage of cash, people not having enough currency to buy what they need, and you're probably going to end up with a lack of choice too. I mean, you're not going to have 5 brands of crackers at the store, because why would different companies be producing 5 brands of crackers when people can barely afford one brand, right? So you're going to have a loss of selection as well. As far as you're talking about the waves. The U.S., I would say, is going to have deflation as a result of the shortage of currency, until the world demands that it be changed to a new reserve currency. Right now, with the dollar as the reserve currency, it's the only currency in the world that has the debt pool that people can park their money into. And when there's no longer room for everyone to park their money, they're going to demand a new reserve currency. And then the dollar just gets exchanged out for something new.
And it falls in value rapidly when that starts.
Mm-hmm.
Fire sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's probably a ways out still.
Few years. I mean, I can't predict the future on it, but
and
I mean, the
what
euro is
for buying metals then.
Well, yeah, metals are good when people no longer have trust in government. So
right.
yeah, so metals that's when metals will increase. When people finally lost trust in governments, then they'll turn back to commodities. The currency will no longer be valuable, so we'll turn back to the commodity.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the crypto scenario that started playing out last week? Have you been watching that at all?
I haven't paid attention last week to the crypto. What's been going on with it?
Okay, this is pretty interesting.
Maybe Adam could jump in.
Maybe he could. He's been given an invite, but he's feeling shy today. So the crypto market cap was at it got whacked. It was at almost 300 billion. And then as the Dow decline progressed, it got down to 140, 130 billion. So it lost it lost 2.5 times its value. It was halved and then some, right? It went down to 40% of its original value, let's say. So the market cap got down to about 140 billion, 130, 140. And last week it went up to 175. It's at about 172 billion right now. So it's recovered a large portion of what it lost. And this all happened. It recovered this huge portion of what it lost in a week where Wall Street markets continued to decline and gold stayed flat. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed that because I have Ether, EOS, and Digix. Those are the 3 that I actually have a meaningful position in. Not that big, but big enough that I care. And Berwick was talking about it, and he said that as more and more nonsense happens with traditional currencies and traditional markets, as the interference with them increases, cryptos, which just can't be interfered with the same way, are going to start to look like a stable option. And in his opinion, this could be the decoupling of crypto with the Wall Street market, because crypto can't be tampered with, if you want to or not.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
Except through large buying and sell-offs.
Yeah, and I can only make a guess on it. One of the things that drove the price of crypto up a few years ago was the Chinese buying it up, and in order to move their money out of the country. And this last week, my understanding is that additional restrictions have been put on Europeans for pulling cash out of the bank. So, our question: are Europeans moving to crypto for the same reason that the Chinese did? Okay.
We're here. This is the rebound.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Here's a 1 week.
Okay.
There's a 1 week chart. Here's 1 month. There's 1 month. So you see the rebound happening.
Right. Yeah. You had the big drop and then the rebound. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm wondering if Europeans are moving into it as a way to escape the euro, since they can no longer get cash out of the bank. But I'm just making a guess on that.
Okay.
And then
He's getting stuff.
Yeah. Another thing about the crypto, I don't remember how long it was. A few years ago, 3 years ago, the European banks started accepting crypto as a deposit. And so one of the questions is, are they going to forcibly, just automatically convert that crypto, Bitcoin or whatever it is, into the new European cryptocurrency? And then everyone's locked, who had private crypto is locked into the new government crypto in Europe.
That's interesting.
I guess that's the one reservation I've always had about crypto, is that could it be the beta test for a federal currency, a federal cryptocurrency that is trackable? The question I've always had about it. Would they just make private cryptos illegal?
Right. Well, and how would you enforce that and track it? But yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
The endpoints, just like Tor, the endpoints are where the risk is. So
Right.
I think with enough data, you can always track it back to things that are bought and sold in the real world.
Do the endpoints sort of go away as the transaction methods get more mature, though? Like, eventually you don't have... Adam is in the queue. I'm going to put him on here. But eventually you don't have people exchanging in dollars and exchanging out of dollars. Like, right now there's entry and exit. And so when all that stuff stays in circulation... anyway.
There's always a risk with crypto, though, that retroactively all your transactions are tied back to you because of unless you're doing shuffling between different accounts and all that.
Hey guys, it's Adam here.
What's up, Adam? Do you want to tell us about what you think is going on with crypto in relation to gold, silver, the markets, and the dollar?
Well, I think that an interesting thing about crypto is that you really can't close the market. So where other economies are frozen and only maybe a select few can actually position themselves when the markets are actually closed, in crypto, that's just not possible. So I think that level of freedom and just the market activity itself is allowing for these things to decouple from the panic that's happening in other markets. Beyond that, of course, I would only be speculating, what are people really thinking when they're making these buying decisions? One thing that I'm always keeping in the back of my mind with crypto is that while it can be designed to have the principles like of good money built in, a good money really needs to be widely accepted. So there's always going to be this cultural element, this network effect. And the fluidity of crypto markets also means that these network effects can be fluctuating very quickly. So, if you're a Bitcoin maximalist and then all of a sudden the world decides that Ethereum is the way to go, I mean, you're going to be left behind. But it's hard to predict that. So I kind of always keep that in the back of my mind, that the technology itself is extremely promising. It's allowing people to voluntarily associate and do business with each other permissionlessly, and in a way that can't be censored, or is extremely difficult to censor. But the technology is still really nascent. It's completely changing all the time, and but it's allowing for new ways of social organization. That's the thing that I'm really excited about.
What do you think about Bitcoin still having like 67% market dominance in terms of its market cap? You talked about money. One of the aspects of money is it being widely accepted.
I mean, there's a huge fight between the Bitcoin forks. One of the, I think, biggest hits against Bitcoin is that it doesn't have good leadership, which is kind of ironic. Like a decentralized platform actually benefits from some level of centralized planning and leadership, because without it, you get extreme divergence in the direction that people want to take the code. And that's what's happened with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. But Bitcoin Cash is way more usable. But people still see the other Bitcoin, the main Bitcoin, as having more value for whatever reason.
So I got a theory there to run by you, and it has to do with perception. So if you're into crypto, you see every coin as its own standalone coin that can't be arbitrarily inflated because of how the code is written. However, if you're not that into crypto and you see all of crypto as one monolithic thing, the explosion of coins that we saw a couple of years ago, even though each coin to itself can't be inflated, the explosion of coins is a form of inflation because you don't know which coin to put your money in.
Yeah, well, money has a mimetic effect. You don't have to care or believe in the value of money yourself, but if you see other people doing that, that's enough to get you to buy into that story. And that's how you can see the idea of money spread between early societies. You've got one society who's trading in a good and treating it like a money. And another society might be like, well, what do we care about this paper or these shells? Well, we care about it because we can get the things we actually care about it from these other people by trading with them. And the same thing is going to happen in crypto. And there's a huge, the amount of crypto literacy, the penetration of that knowledge into most of society is really thin. So there's still, a very few number of people growing that know how to use it, are kind of up on the technology, understand what the various inflationary policies or the various monetary policies are for the various tokens and how they work. And then there's a larger group of people who just know what Bitcoin is. So, that effect is going to take a really long time to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the slope of enlightenment on the hype cycle curve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what do you see for the next, as 2020 plays out, and we have all these weird forces on money that Mike was talking about. We have this $1,000 to everybody in America, and then we have a potential housing crisis again, and who knows what's going on with Wall Street because that's all controlled. How do you see the crypto space in general, and then some specific coins? How do you see people responding to that and starting to educate themselves on those technologies as the traditional markets look more and more like some sort of orchestrated scam?
Well, I think a reasonable place to look historically is the Eurozone crisis, because every time that there was a new headlines about people not being able to withdraw their funds, there was a spike in crypto price. People care about monetary freedom as soon as they don't have it anymore, right? So as soon as you can't actually access your investments, you can't sell, you can't buy, you can't withdraw. That's when you're like, wow, these points are worthless. Let me go hop on, or at least I can't use them. So let me go look for a system that has points that are usable. And, I don't think people really care about monetary policy. They're not really thinking about it. They're not really holding money speculatively. They're just, if they needed to buy things, they put a little bit away. They're not thinking about it very deeply. But as soon as it stops working, that's when you actually pay attention and you have to educate yourself. And so it doesn't have to happen in the US either. Like, it could happen in other places that have worse monetary policies. And those are going to be drivers of demand for various cryptocurrencies. And I think that might be the playing field as well, that is going to level out the various crypto blockchain technologies that are in contention right now. Are people going to select Bitcoin, or are they going to select Bitcoin Cash? Are they going to select Ethereum or some other thing they've heard of? I really don't have a good read on it, but I do know that when people can't use it, they don't like it. So that applies to your current banking system, and it applies to a network that's totally congested. And if you can't get your transaction through, well, at a critical time, then that's gonna stick with you. I think that does drive people to actually pick a cryptocurrency based on, some kind of merit, its functionality. But yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you distill down people's view of money to that. That's great. How does crypto become more usable over this year? Like, that's been one of the barriers to widespread acceptance. Is it such a pain in the butt to use?
I think there's two things with that. I mean, on one hand, there's a UI angle.
Volatility.
Yeah, volatility is part of making it difficult to use. But I'm really excited about stable coins. They really reduce the volatility, but give you all the fungibility and security aspects of crypto.
What's a stable coin all about?
A stable coin is some token that has some mechanism to peg the price to some other external asset. So one example of a stable coin is Digix Gold. There's a gold token, and it's 1-for-1 to 1 gram of gold, and you can actually redeem your grams of gold potentially at some, there's a fee on that, but holding the token is equivalent to the gold. So that stable coin is tracking, not perfectly, but the market forces make it stick really close to the actual gold spot price, and people trust it because it's backed by an institution. So that's an example of a centralized authority issuing a token, and people's faith in the token reduces to the faith in the institution. And there's a couple other ones like that for US dollars. So there's USDC, which is issued by a US-based exchange called Coinbase. And I use that a lot because, it works extremely well, and I can convert between US dollars and USDC instantaneously with zero slippage in my Coinbase account. So if I need to send somebody some US dollars and I know they've got a Coinbase account, it's actually pretty easy to just send it to them over the Ethereum network. And at any point in time, they can take it over to Coinbase and press a button and instantaneously, with no slippage and no fee, have US dollars that they can move, within that financial system. Now, of course, that has the downside of you have to trust Coinbase. The only reason that it works so well is because Coinbase is backing it and they're allowing it to work so well. But if they defaulted, that would be a bad situation. There is another stable coin that's using entirely market forces to back the coin, and that's called DAI. And that one doesn't as perfectly track the US dollars peg, because they're constantly adjusting a couple levers in their monetary policy to get effectively to keep DAI trending towards the peg, and that's a whole other discussion of those market forces. But it's not based on trust in an institution at all. It's entirely based on voluntary participation by a couple different actors to create DAI. So that's actually been trading for a premium, because the way that DAI is generated is you open a debt position, you deposit some collateral, and that gives you permission in the smart contract to create and withdraw a certain amount of DAI. And you have to pay an interest rate. And if the value of your collateral decreases below some threshold, you can get liquidated. So, during the latest crash of the crypto markets, sometime last week, people's collateralized debt positions were going underwater. And so that pushed people to buy DAI to be able to close them. And now DAI is trading at 1 or 2 cents above the dollar. And that'll probably go back down. They have a couple different, actually, I think there's really one main lever that they get to pull, which is the interest rate on the collateralized debt positions. And when there's too much DAI in the system, they can raise the interest rate on that, encouraging people to return DAI, basically destroying it and close their debt position. And they can lower the interest rate to incentivize people to open more debt positions and create more DAI in the process. But the system is entirely closed. At the point that all collateralized debt positions are closed, there's zero DAI in issuance.
Okay.
So, and the reason that it pegs at $1 is because the valuation of the collateral is in terms of $1. So there, it obviously gets into some more complex economics, but it's actually fairly simple. There's just a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, stable coins offer some benefits of crypto without the volatility, but obviously tangent adoption. You got UI and then basic knowledge. Like there's basic crypto literacy. How do I actually use this thing in a secure way? And then you've got a user interface problem, which is that a lot of the user interfaces are pretty clunky.
How does paying taxes and the complexity around tracking all of your transactions on different exchanges and then person to person, how does that factor into being a barrier for adoption?
That is also a huge barrier because that's part of the literacy that you have to get up to speed on to be able to use crypto effectively and legally, in practice. And it's tractable, but you have to understand that you need to track your transactions and trades, and if you're reporting those.
Yeah, was there any fallout from people who didn't pay taxes in 2017, 2018?
I'm sure that there is starting to be, and there definitely will be, because they have
a couple-year delay.
Yeah, I mean, the IRS is behind in terms of guidelines, but they have updated them this year in some actually really helpful ways. There's more that they could do, but the big thing that they changed is they allow individual lot selection. So if you're familiar with accounting for stocks, you have to calculate your capital gains. So you've got your initial cost basis, and when you go to sell it, you have to match that up to figure out exactly how much you made, and that's what you pay taxes on. And you have to track that in a consistent way, first in, first out, or last in, first out. And you have to pick one and stick with it. And there's some rules about when you can actually change your accounting mechanism. So they actually now allow for crypto assets that you can individually hand pick the lots that you're selling, which allows you to very easily, it allows you to optimize your capital gains so that you owe less taxes. And I'm actually refiling my 2017, 2018 taxes to take advantage of this, and it's saving me a lot. But that's a whole thing that I've had to spend a lot of time getting up to speed on, that the average person just can't, and most accountants don't know about it. I've had to find an accountant who I knew could get up to speed on it, even though they weren't already.
Mm-hmm. I sold some Ether a couple of years ago. And my accountant was actually in Canada. The rules are pretty simple, and so it was just knowing what the initial cost was, and then the sell price. They didn't care about tracking trades or anything like that. It's pretty low drama.
Yeah, that only really tracking trades really only. I mean, I don't know how different the cost basis tracking requirements are in Canada, but if you just have a few trades, it's not too bad. But when you start having a lot of transactions, then you really need a tool, and the tools are behind as well.
Yeah, my accountant only was concerned about cash in, cash out, which made it really easy.
Nice.
And I don't know if that they basically said that those are the Canadian rules, because yeah, they didn't really care what happened until the money was repatriated.
Is there long-term versus short-term tax differences?
No, that's a United States thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would dramatically simplify it, because
it'd be interesting to see if, based on different regulatory environments, if crypto catches on in some countries before others, which I'm sure that's already happening.
Yeah, it for sure it is. I mean,
because then it'll be a reserve currency versus crypto battle in a couple of years.
So Bitcoin Cash has done a huge push on adoption, and like mobilized a lot of people to go to retailers like bars, restaurants, and get them set up with Bitcoin Cash and try to actually drive that kind of adoption. And I've actually seen a lot of like posts on Twitter coming out of Australia with, who are, I think they might be ahead of the curve on the Bitcoin Cash adoption, surprisingly. But there are a lot of places.
Right. That's another action item people could take, is stuff like that. We're talking about things you can do in this time of uncertainty, and that's a proactive direction, like the Bitcoin Cash guys going around and getting retailers set up.
There's this guy, Ryan Selkis, and he sells this as like a course, but he's got a lot of good free articles, and he has this whole he calls it a bankless movement or something like that, and it's basically a series of articles to get you up to speed on crypto literacy, and he actually has some interesting articles about setting up a self-directed IRA that allows you to invest in whatever you want, including crypto. So it's a lot of stuff like that, but there's it's a nice initial outline of the things that you would need to get up to speed on to be able to use and operate in that world effectively. I'll go find that link.
I'm looking at banklesstimes.com.
I haven't seen that one.
He has a bunch of articles on here.
Or maybe that is his site. I just didn't recognize the URL.
Or he has some. But yeah, link it up and we'll post it up. That's cool. Yeah, so this could be one of the events that really pushes people to understand the technology better and to move into it more completely. Like for my business, I just opened a web store, or my employees did. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. They did because they're awesome. We have a couple products that we're going to be putting up on the store, and I'm in Canada, so it's like I have to accept dual currency, and there's fees, and everybody takes their little bites. And so I would be super interested in getting some form of crypto payment on there. Not because I think anybody's going to use it, but because it would be great to actually have it and understand the process. And then if people say, hey, I really like your thing, but I only buy with crypto, or if somebody says, hey, I have crypto and I want to buy something cool, for either one of those, I could direct them to my store and then become part of this, like, well, yeah, nobody really buys or sells in crypto, but I actually take it and I know how to do it. That's something I would be interested in. And so this vacation here that we all get is an opportunity for me to understand more about that. I might hit you up with some questions about that.
For sure. Yeah, I can at least point you at or help you find the right tools to integrate that, and then also help you with the more pragmatic side of security. How you can store it. I'm sure you're already up to speed on some of that stuff.
You wanna share your private key publicly, right? I'm pretty sure that's what you want to do.
One of the two. It's one of the two.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be cool. We could even do a little YouTube series on that. How to get your web store running on Bitcoin Cash or something.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
and how to handle your accounting and taxes and stuff. That would be. I think as more resources come on for that, it'll get less scary for more institutional users.
Well, I've had an account. I have an account that's paying 8.6% interest in a U.S. dollar stablecoin.
But that's not what the Fed rate is.
That's not what the Fed rate is. It's amazing. Don't tell anybody. Yeah, there's a number of investment platforms that are both decentralized and centralized that allow for earning interest on crypto holdings, which is pretty exciting.
Cool. Very cool. That's a good take, like a good little introduction. We'll be doing more of these over the next couple weeks, but yeah, I'm serious. I would love to do a little show or series of shows on getting retail set up with crypto with you. That'd be cool.
Cool. Yeah, let's plan it.
All right. Do you guys have any closing?
Oh, there was one question in the comments for Adam. Rick says, "I've always been into first in, first out. Been a first in, first out advocate. Inventory wise, what are the advantages of first in, last out?" Well,
if you're talking about stocks and you're trying to optimize long-term capital gains, first in, first out is it really depends on how far back your current holdings are. If you have a lot of
sorry, he's saying inventory wise. I wonder if he means for physical goods.
Well, for physical goods, you're probably not computing it in terms of capital gains, unless you're individually tracking the sale and loss of property on the individual goods. Then it's probably just all going to be like business inventory that you're selling, and then it's just a cost of doing business. And you're not tracking the individual fluctuation of the price of each individual asset. But if you are doing that, because there are some businesses that might buy property and then be selling it, or some asset like that. If you have a bunch of the assets that have made it to long-term capital gains, there's not a lot of reason to keep holding them when you want to sell something, because they've already made it. There's no further tax benefit to holding it longer. So at least with respect to optimizing tax benefits, if you can sell the older ones that have made it to long-term capital gains and you need to sell something, then that's when first in, first out starts to benefit you. But if that's kind of a rare case, like you're buying and trading a lot and you don't hold inventory for over a year very often, then
it keeps your portfolio flushed out, so you always have to pay capital gains.
Yeah.
Cool.
But that's the cool thing with these new guidelines for the IRS is you don't have to follow first in, first out, or last in, first out exclusively. You can pick for an individual asset the best way to sell however you want. So you can say, I'm selling specifically the one that I got on this date, and it was at that price. So you can, once you have a few that have gotten to long-term capital gains, you can selectively sell those.
Okay, cool. So Rick says it's basically a physical versus legal question.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Or am I misunderstanding something?
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that whole short-term, long-term capital gains thing in the States makes it complicated.
It really does, yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Do you guys have any wrap up on the week? I imagine we'll be doing more of these every couple days since we got nothing better to do. Hashtag.
Readable.
Yes, right. READABOOK. Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
Wash your hands.
Masks don't work. No, I'm good here. So
Okay, cool. Anything from your end, Josh? Closing thoughts?
I'm not sure his mic is working. No mic.
No, Mike.
Oh, should we have cash on hand?
Should we have cash on hand?
Unless you just washed your hands.
Oh, yeah.
Don't touch cash.
You are muted. Josh is muted.
It doesn't show he's.
Something's muted.
Probably a good time to diversify. Have some physical gold or coins. Have some cash. Cash is probably going to be performing pretty well for a while, and be ready to jump on some crypto. We're in a weird spot where there's a lot of places that capital could flow. So diversify.
Yeah,
Strength,
that's a good.
strength into, what's Canada's motto?
Diversity is our strength, or something. I don't know what Canada's motto is.
It's that. Yeah.
From sea to sea.
They didn't make you take a test and know that?
I did have to take the test, but the motto is from sea to sea, and it's like it's in French or Latin or something. It's like from Mar to Mar or whatever, which sounds very Manifest Destiny to me, but whatever. Yeah, I am going to be probably getting some silver ETF on Monday, and I got some crypto that I held through the downfall, and I should have put it in Tether, but I didn't because it's in a traditional market. Oops, but it's tax free if it goes up, so yay.
Yeah, my plan on the crypto is I'm just going to put a buy spread below the current price because I'm fine sitting in US dollars, and if it drops again, which it probably won't, then I'll pick some up.
Right. Yeah, most of mine's not in like a traditional exchange. It's in a retirement savings plan that I have, and it's on a Norwegian stock exchange,
which is a Canadian thing.
Yeah, the whole thing's weird, but anyway, yeah. So I'm on the ride, but I'm watching it. But that's cool. Yeah, good advice. Now is a very good time to get into crypto. There's a lot of time to get educated, like Eskimo Warrior was saying. And 10 years ago, Josh and I were talking about this on the show and we missed it. So good time to figure out crypto and get into it. Cool. Thanks for coming on, guys. This has been rad. Mike had to take off to get lunch, but yeah, thanks to Mike for coming on too. His thoughts on this have been great.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be
get him a new headset.
Yes, and better internet.
Yeah.
And Josh is doing the sideways life. Yeah, no, it's been exactly, gangsta style. That's been awesome. We will do more of these. I don't know, maybe tomorrow or Monday for sure. So cool having you guys on.
We could do a market open.
Monday.
Yeah, we could take bets on what the market's doing.
Let's do that.
It could be a drinking game.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, good talking with you guys.
Good talking to you guys. Thanks to everybody out in YouTube land as well.
Bye to everyone in the comments.
Yes.
Later.
We will see you guys later this week.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.